Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video and another plug side chat. I recently went on a trip to Utah to visit Bryce Canyon, and along that trip I had a bit of an epiphany because part of my reason for doing it while I was out there, I wanted to check the progress of the public charging infrastructure along the way, and it is progressing really fast. But I was primarily focused on the DC fast charging, the public DC fast charging. But it's when I realized that the actual weak point in the public charging infrastructure at this point is no longer the DC fast charging network. It's actually the level 2 destination charging network. And the reason I say that is outside of major metropolitan city areas with large EV ownership, really the only level 2 that you typically find are, maybe one-offs of level 2 chargers that are just the J1772 or Tesla destination chargers. But even the Tesla destination chargers, they're typically only maybe 2 units per site. And if the business sponsored it, they also typically add one J1772 along with it. So you have basically 3 chargers per site. And there aren't a lot of these sites out there. They're well distributed and they're at locations where it makes sense, hotels, motels, along scenic byways or, at vacation spots. And on my trip, twice, 2 nights in a row, these destination charging locations were at their maximum capacity. And it's difficult to tell if it were only 3 plug-in vehicles because you don't know how many other vehicles were turned away. So the first night was at a site that I should have been able to charge overnight. However, the format of the site wasn't conducive for it. Essentially, they have 3 chargers, but they only have 2 parking spaces that are accessible, or at least that are marked EV only. So a third spot that could have been accessible was iced basically the whole time that I was there. Now, the second spot actually does have 3 dedicated EV spots and 2 Tesla destination chargers and one J1772. And when I arrived, there were 2 vehicles already there charging. One was a plug-in hybrid Porsche Cayenne, and it was using the J1772, and the other was a Tesla Model S. So there was a third spot. But again, I charged overnight. I have no idea how many other electric vehicles might have had the intention of staying there or using that spot. So once you hit the maximum capacity, it's really hard to tell whether more capacity is needed. But just based on this, I could say most definitely there is. With the number of new electric vehicles hitting the roads, with the number of plug-in hybrid electric vehicles hitting the roads, it's going to overwhelm our destination charging infrastructure. So I feel like I fell into a trap where, especially in light of things like the supercharger network, where every new automaker is compared to Tesla, whether they're providing charging infrastructure. It's always a focus on the DC fast charging network. And I actually think that is going to be sufficient, at least for the next 5 years, after things like Electrify America, some of the California Energy Commission sites, after they get built out, after Utah and Colorado and a few other states build out their infrastructure plans. I think the DC fast charging infrastructure will be sufficient for the next 4 to 5 years. It's the destination charging infrastructure that's really weak. I myself fell into that trap, sort of scoffing at ChargePoint for their wanting to put in those millions of charging points, but they're primarily being level 2 chargers. And I'm rethinking that now after this trip because I'm seeing the true weak point in the public charging infrastructure to be the destination chargers. Because the truth of the matter is the upcoming electric vehicles, they have sufficient range where just 1 or 2 DC fast charging stops throughout a trip would be enough for most people for a day. So really the question is, will they be able to fill up their EV overnight when it's convenient, when they're staying at their motel or hotel or wherever it happens to be that they're stopping for the night? Because that's really what makes traveling in an electric vehicle convenient, is knowing that you get to start out each day with hours of driving available to you. You never had to go out of your way to visit a fueling station or anything of that nature. And it's also what allows you, once you arrive at your venue, right? I only spent a night in St. George, but had I spent a week there and that was my hotel room, I could have literally visited 4 or 5 different locations throughout Utah, spent the day there, came back to my hotel at night, and never once have to go out of my way to fuel ever, right? It makes for the ultimate vacation trip where you're never inconvenienced while you're at the site. So without those destination chargers being fully built out, I think it's going to put a lot more stress on the public DC fast charging networks. It's going to put a lot more stress on the Tesla supercharger network. So I think it's going to behoove a lot of these charging providers to start building level 2 destination chargers at points that make sense. And I think ChargePoint is on the right path with their plan to put those 2 million charging points in place. But I think Electrifying America also needs to look into doing this, partnering with national hotel and motel chains. And we can't just be putting in 2 or 3 level 2s at a hotel site anymore. It needs to be, in my opinion, 6 to 8 to 10. And, at that point, I don't know that you even need to mark the spots as EV only if you have cords that can reach multiple spots. As long as you have enough coverage for probably 10 to 20% of your guests, I think it will be sufficient. So splitting 2 parking spaces with a dual head level 2 that can reach the next adjacent space either direction, or maybe front and back, I think that's the model that we're going to need to push. I think people really need to reach out to these hotels and motels and let them know, look, it's in your best interest to provide this as a service, because you're going to start missing out on guests, not just pure electric vehicle drivers, but plug-in hybrid drivers as well. I'd love to hear what you think. Have you been traveling a lot with your EV? Have you tried to overnight charge and been blocked because there weren't enough parking spaces, there weren't enough chargers, they just didn't have enough coverage for the electric vehicle needs? If you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And thank you for watching.